You know our Bureau of Meteorology, it's been plugging the global warming scare for years, but you wonder how we can trust its predictions of what the climate will be in 50 years' time when it's just made a huge blue about the rains, well, that you're seeing right now. And it's a mistake that's cost farmers a lot. Just 2 months ago, the Bureau issued this long-range forecast, repeating a prediction of warmer and drier than average conditions, said they were likely across most of southern and eastern Australia from October to December. And that's after taking all influences into account, which of course included the El Nino. Now, a lot of farmers thought, well, you know, dry, they're not going to have food for their stock. Fodder costs a lot. Better sell the stock fast. As you saw, we discussed in the show, prices crashed. Except, as you can tell, in many parts of this country, that forecast was dead wrong. True, October was dry. But this month, you check the rainfall so far. On this map, the Bureau of Meteorology, white, blue and purple means above average. So that's a lot of rain in particularly southern and eastern Australia. And by the way, the Bureau does keep underestimating the rain we do get. 16 years ago, it claimed that global warming was already drying up our dams. One of its top forecasters did a Flannery. He said, truth be known, climate change here is now running so rampant that we don't need meteorological data to see it. Almost every one of our cities is on the verge of running out of water. And our largest irrigation system, the Murray-Darling, is on the verge of collapse. Well, 16 years ago, we all know that was complete nonsense, and now it's completely wrong again. Joining me is National Senator Matt Canavan, the former Resources Minister. Matt Canavan, good to see you. The Bureau 16 years ago says global warming causing cities to run out of water. Now we've got near record amounts of water in storage. In September, last September, it says November will be hot and dry. Now look, mistakes happen, but what conclusions do you draw?
Well, no doubt weather forecasting is a very tough game, Andrew, but the fact that we can't seem to get a forecast right for the next 3 months seems to me that we should be sceptical about the predictions that are made for the next 30 years. We should take them with a grain of salt. And ironically enough, I have noticed that it's been very, very wet down here in Canberra when you look out the window sometimes from this building. But we were also debating in the Senate today the government's anti-farmer Murray-Darling legislation. They want to take more water away from farmers because they're once again scaring everybody. There won't be enough water around in the future. I went back and had a look at some of the predictions as you have done on the show. And the CSIRO also predicted in 2007 that water runoff in the Murray-Darling would reduce by 15% by 2020. Totally wrong. It's been about the same over that period. It was much higher than during the Federation drought. Remember the Garneau report? Do you remember the Garneau report? There was a lot of
No, I
back
do.
in 2008. Ross Garneau predicted that get to this one, Andrew, irrigated agriculture would fall by 92% by 2100. Now, we're a fair way from 2100 yet, but we're now 15 years on from his prediction, and I don't think we're on track for a 92% fall in Australian agriculture. In fact, it's been growing. I'd love to be reincarnated as a weather forecaster because these people are never, or I should say a climate forecaster, they're even better because they're never held accountable for their mistakes.
It's so true. I remember Ross Garneau. He installed a steel roof in his Melbourne home in case of monster hail. And these have real life consequences. You're talking about, if you get the predictions of runoff to the rivers wrong, then farmers have to pay for it with reduced irrigation because the government's taken it from them. I mean, seriously. Meanwhile, Matt, another false prediction. As you know, the government promised 18 months ago our electricity bills are going to fall by $275, saying now, well, all this wind and solar power that it's going to give us, that, though, is going to push our electricity bills down. Here is Chris Bowen.
Renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy, and that includes when you include and count transmission and storage.
But, Matt, that claim that the government keeps making that wind and solar are the cheapest and so power prices are going to fall has been directly contradicted by two top experts. One I mentioned last night, the head of our top electricity producer, saying there's a misunderstanding when people say renewables will be cheaper, will lead to cheaper generation costs. Wrong. This, in fact, will lead to higher costs in the short and medium term. And that's now been backed up by one of the managers of the Australian Energy Market Operator that oversees the electricity system. He says it is going to cost. Here he is.
I don't want to give the impression that energy transition isn't going to cost something, but because it is, and I think we do a disservice if we sort of say that it's not.
So, Matt, what gets me, why aren't more journalists livid about the government's deceit in this area?
Yeah, the government has been lying here, and unfortunately, the estimates that Chris Bowen is relying on come from the same organisation, the CSIRO, that got the Murray-Darling forecast so wrong. These organisations seem to have been captured by ideology and are putting that ahead of the reality. And that is the reality is catching up. I mean, to have another reference back to the 2000s, Chris Bowen is a bit like that Comical Ali figure. Remember Comical Ali from the Iraqi invasion? He's standing in front of this electricity grid that is just crashing behind him, saying, "Don't worry, everybody, wind and solar is the cheapest form of power." And no matter how many times Chris Bowen says it, doesn't change the fact that the more we install of it, the higher your power bill gets. And eventually people will wake up to that reality. That is the hard, cold reality of living under this Labor Green government. You're paying more for energy, you're paying more for electricity. And until we change tack here and realise that we can't run a system based on weather-dependent energy sources, we'll keep suffering pain. So I don't know, there's pretty much no chance of Chris Bowen waking up. There's pretty much no chance of Anthony Albanese waking up. I suppose we're just lucky it's only 18 months to another election.
Absolutely. Matt Canavan, thank you so much indeed for your time.